Woohoo. All
All
right.
right.
So, welcome, beautiful souls. My name is Jeri Tourand, for those of you that haven't met me. And I am here with one of my truest best friends, Desiree Michelle Van Domzelaar. And
Hi.
yeah, and I'm so stoked because like Des and I used to do blog talk radio shows together way back, like I think starting in 2012
Oh
ish.
my God. Yeah.
And oh my gosh, we had so much fun. And I haven't seen her like in person for a while, so this just kind of feels like a hug and
Yeah.
and I'm needing this time. So, and I'm super excited to introduce her to all of you, everyone who's watching this. I mean,
Mhm.
you're here for a reason. You were drawn to this interview for a reason. And I've been dying to do this interview for so long because I
Oh.
mean, Des made some ridiculously courageous changes in her life. So she's one of the people that, I mean, she's just the real deal. Like
Mhm.
our radio show is Real Life Radio, which stands for Rocking Emotionally Authentic Living. And this is like, to me, Des, what you stand for.
Hmm.
It's just this emotional authenticity, the rawness, the realness, and your vibe is so much fun. Like, so Des does life in such a playful, joyful way and such a real connected way. So I just, I want you to meet this incredible woman if you haven't already met her, and I know a lot of you have. And yeah, we want to talk about making difficult decisions because that is something that so many people are struggling with right now. They're at a turning point in their life. They're going through some massive transitions. I mean, globally,
Mm.
we're going through massive transition. So, of course, that kind of reflects personally. I mean, those of us that are on an awakening journey, on a journey to become more authentic, more true to ourselves, we're feeling it. We're feeling it pretty good. That this is like a whole new paradigm, a whole new chapter, and we're not quite sure what the rules are in this new chapter. But Des, you're always kind of ahead of the game a little bit, and you and I kind of play in this little arena
Yeah.
where we seem to mirror each other in so many ways. So I want you to, rather than me fill them in, I want you to share a little bit about this decision you made a year ago and, to change your life. And what did that look like?
Thank you. I should have got a box of Kleenex. That introduction made me get teary. Before we started, I'd already mentioned to you that I've been like at or near tears for the last few days. So I'm just going to warn everybody I might get a little wet around the eyes, but don't stress about it. It's just, I always say the heart is juicy and it leaks out sometimes. So yeah, some emotionally authentic living. I mean, that would really be where it started from. Like it has been almost to the day a year. It's a little bit more. It's like a year and 10 days that I landed here on the island. But I mean, really, that was one of a long series of hard and difficult, in many ways, Sophie's choices that I've made in my life. One, getting married young and choosing that instead of college was one big choice, and trying to navigate that one. And then getting married was another one, and then having kids was another one, and then getting divorced was another one, right? So there's been like these great big decisions that I think a lot of people wrestle with in their life. I don't know if they get all of them. To become a parent, like all of that, to face our longings inside of ourselves and decide, and I'll do my best to speak in the first person, like for myself, like it's such an interesting transition to go from making choices from trying to please that voice in your head that's maybe a conglomeration of your dad or your mom or your priest or your, whatever it is, that voice in your head that you're always trying to improve or impress with your choices instead of living from your authentic place. You're trying to please that voice in your head.
Mhm.
um, and I think the first time that you break away from that, the first time I broke away from that, it was incredibly life changing. This one, like they say with practice, you get better with stuff. And so this last decision, most recent major decision to sell everything, leave my kids behind. I mean, they're mostly adult at this point. They're 21 and 17, but they're still my babies. And my daughter is the younger one. And I mean, it's just been like, honestly, like a Sophie's choice. And so here's the tears about like, man, oh man, like there was this part of me that has been longing to do this, to leave sort of the corporate world behind in its entirety and move back to the island, back to Vancouver Island, which is where I am now, because in my heart and in the marrow of my bones, that's always been home. Like in a deep way, this is home, right? And so for 30 some years, I've been living away from home in the wrong province and living the wrong life, even though through all those choices I just outlined to you at the beginning here, it was like this journey towards truth. And what the hell is truth, with a capital T? And it's not even a finite point. It's forever changing and evolving and moving. And so like the capacity to meet these crossroads and try to meet them with integrity and with deep honesty in and of itself has been this crazy journey of, getting better at it and getting, I thought before I was coming from my truth, but this is an even deeper truth, so it's like these multiple layers of growth and of self-recognition and self-love in a really deep way. Like unfortunately those roads, like self-love, like that gets thrown around so much, but it's like, what in the hell does that mean? And I'm just now coming into this recognition of it really means like to just really radically be honest with yourself, love who you are as you are, where you are, not like in this, well, when I lose that 10 pounds or when I get that job or when I move to that other town or when it's like, but like profoundly making friends with the stuff I didn't want to acknowledge and the parts of myself that, in a lot of ways, the choices that I've made in the past and even more recent ones, it's like, like, honestly, you're catching me at the most interesting moment because I'm like right now going, oh my God, the thing that motivated me to move here isn't what I thought it was. You know what I mean? I'm like, and I'm having this like lifetime paradigm rocking recognition of some truths that I've been avoiding, right? And so like I feel like I'm talking, not really answering your question, but it's like, I guess because I'm in process right now, maybe even in that self, there's a gift there. It's sort of answering the question because it is a process. Like it's all a freaking process. And being in the middle of this one where I'm recognizing that I've had this sort of, either I've been really wanting to please that imaginary voice in my head, or I just want to rebel against it. But neither one of those are like actually free choices. Those are both chained to something, like it isn't entirely from this authentic place. And I think it's also, and it's not correct to say, well, I'm either making these choices completely unconsciously from my buried material I haven't resolved, or it's the most divinely, just purely divine guided choices that, it's some kind of a weird amalgamation of both of those things. Although as time goes on and I make these enormously big life-changing choices, I feel like I'm getting clearer and clearer, or it's a cleaner decision or more conscious or more genuine or authentic. But I mean, the point that I was saying a little intention or a little prayer to myself before we got on this call about like, how can I best be a conduit for what needs to be shared today? How, how can I step outside of my own story and just reveal through my story, I guess, what needs to be said or what's longing to be heard or what would be of best use to the most amount of people at this time, and so forgive me because I'm going to ramble, but that's my intention. And I just want to put it out there that I know I can so empathize with being in a position where you're at a crossroads and you feel so profoundly torn, like Sophie's choice, for whoever's not familiar with the story, like which of my kids am I going to have killed, basically. Like, it's like, it's so unbelievable. It's like, sometimes we find ourselves in these places where the decision that you need to make isn't clear. It's not like this is all bad on that side and it's all good on that side. And, off into the sunset you go, like,
so true.
yeah, like, should I stay in this relationship? Should I move? Should I leave this job? Should I get the vaccine or not? Like there's all of these choices, and we're not going to, but I mean, it seems like we're finding ourselves in this interesting place globally about how are we going to approach life? Is it going to be fear-based or love-based? Are we going to allow our materials to come up? Are we going to allow ourselves to open into being vulnerable and feeling our own shame and our own fear and our own guilts and the places in ourselves that, heretofore we haven't accepted, the things that we've perhaps run from? Or I've tried personally, like, so growing up, I didn't really have much of a dad. And lately, the lack of that masculine energy and what that represents, security and solidity. And to some degree, I was listening to this podcast today, and the fellow mentioned, he's like, in a lot of respects, government and authority is sort of an archetype of the father. And so, getting curious about what's your relationship with government and authority and your father and security and feeling all those things, because throwing everything away, selling everything, and buying a tiny old van that I was going to have to fix up because it wasn't even all spanky new. So there was an enormous amount of risk there. Right. And right off the hop, I was having issues with the windows all leaking. And it was just this enormously challenging decision to move and to release everything that I thought would represent security, because I really wanted to know what authentic security felt like. And so I'm having all this stuff come up right now, Jeri, about my inner father. And like, am I trying to please, this sort of archetypal imagined one, whom I also married, by the way. My first marriage was absolutely marrying my dad, not in age, but just everything else, and trying to make him happy and please him and be good enough and all of these things, I mean, it's like, totally. And even still, there's this tiny little part that I'm like, I'm not going to make a decision based on that anymore, But it's so recognizing that longing for security, and what does authentic security feel like, and where does it come from? And holy shit, the choices I've made, either running from the fact that I actually do feel inadequate in a lot of ways. I feel like I'm not enough to manage life, or it's not safe and I don't have what it takes to be safe in it. But it's like, I want to put on this big song and dance and like, la, la, la. It's like, like distract the world from my profound insecurity. Somehow coming off as this, and you know what I mean? Like, yeah, look at it. But really inside, I'm just like quaking in profound inadequacy. And so, yeah, when that's really what's going on inside you, conscious or otherwise, making big choices can be far more complicated and far more complex than it would seem by just doing like a pro and con list or whatever, right? So, yeah, I don't know. Your turn.
Okay. Everyone breathe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up so much, and thank you so much for your authenticity and just being so real, because I know that people can relate. And
thank you.
Yeah, these choices, like, they do seem like life or death sometimes. And I mean, in the bigger picture, I'm sure the universe is like, oh, sweetheart, if you only knew, like, just make a decision, just start moving, so that, because the universe can't steer a parked car, just pick, just choose. And then we can steer you, and then we can close the doors, we can open the doors, we can guide you. Just make the choice, like, get out of stagnation, I think, is the main thing, right? So if you're feeling stagnant. And I just have so much respect for you, because I know how much you grappled with, there was all these different, different people in your life and your children, and really just feeling like this pull. And I remember when all of the struggles with your van and the different things where you're like questioning your decisions. But there was but I love the way you always came to the end. Like, every time I talk to you, you see the gift and the learning almost immediately. Like, you start to see, you go through these hardships and the leaky van, and then, I mean, and then you just, like, you're one of those people that just makes lemonade, right? You're like, okay, I actually see the gift in this. I see what this is helping me to heal.
Totally.
Like it's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, thank you for bringing that up, because it is like, if I had a piece of advice to throw out to the world, it would be that, like, there really is no wrong decisions, and you got to get moving, like you said, for the universe to reach you. And so it's like, I think with myself, as I journeyed, from, I want to say, almost completely asleep, like I'm reasonably woke. You know what I mean? But like, the first few big choices I made really were from like utterly having no idea really about the universe, or really having faith in an actual God, or that there's a higher anything at work. Like, it was just, and yet, no matter what choice I made, whether it was right or wrong, or it was easy or difficult or whatever, inevitably there was always growth in it. Like, there's always growth in it, even if the decision you make later proves to be not where you want to continue going. You want to, pivot and change directions again. Well, that's great. Like, I think a lot of people struggle with making those initial choices. And I did, because I didn't want to make the wrong choice and then like somehow profoundly ruin my entire life in an unrecoverable way. And what's interesting is, as I've moved through these decisions and these paths, I have had to grapple with a lot of like, oh shit, like if I had only known what I know now, then, I would have made a different decision, or I would have treated my loved ones differently. I would have been able to love them so much more unconditionally than I can now. And like, as a parent moving through that process too, and I like think back, like, oh my God, like I have so much guilt around how I wish I could have done things differently and been more present, or been way more conscious of the enormous, like, everybody knows those first 5 to 8 years are important, but it was like, if I really understood it at the level that I do now, like how much differently I would approach things, and I would have been so much more willing to accept help, and like all of these things. So it's like learning to hold the space for yourself to go like, shit, like, like if only I could have loved that person like I've learned to love my loved ones now, right? Like, my exes, I have some very beautiful, been very blessed to have some very cool men as partners in my life. And where I'm at now, I look back on how I was able to show up for those relationships. And even though at the time that really truly was the best I could do, it's like, oh, fuck, if I'd only known what I know now, I might have actually even stayed in those some of those relationships, not all of them obviously simultaneously or anything, but they didn't arrive in that way. But it was just like, but it's okay that you didn't, it's okay that I didn't. And I can still, there's this process of coming to acceptance and holding the space for my grief around that. And then also recognizing that at the time that was the best I could do with what I had. And, just through the ethers, offering them the higher vibration love that I do have available now. Right. Even though you can't go back and you can't change stuff, you can still, and then we're going to go off into this weird little left of center thing about energy and life and how the universe works in my mind. But time, I'm like having these really interesting experiences lately about the fluidity of time, and that while you technically can't go back in time, I feel like you can still affect the past. Like,
You absolutely can.
yeah.
I was going to go there if you didn't.
And so it's like, no matter what, like just keep stepping into this love, like just yourself, this deep self-acceptance of exactly yourself and the best that you can do. And like, I'm reading the 4 Agreements right now, which I've read years ago, but like reading it now, it's just it's so much different. Like what I'm getting out of it is just resonating at a completely different level. And it's hitting these things and I'm like, and I'm experimenting with some some different things, and just really coming to having these profound awarenesses about how fluid time is, and how even if you could, like I could only love 7%, let's say, the maximum capacity that I had available was 7% of my heart. But now let's say I have access to 70% of it. I can send to all of the people I've ever known
Yeah.
back in time,
Mm.
this love that I do have access to. And I swear to God, they feel it. Like
Right. Yes.
it's this energetic
Energy.
thing, and it's real. I swear to God, it's real.
Yep. I'm like the Ho'oponopono coach and the forgiveness coach that, yeah, I'd like really feeling that love. And in those moments of feeling that love or feeling that remorse or whatever it is that you're feeling, you can absolutely follow the energy back through your body. It'll take you
Mhm,
to those memories because, yeah, like everything is just present. Everything is just now.
mhm.
And so you go back and you do it differently and you see it differently, or you send, or you just like connect with them as a child, or you as a child, and you hold that little girl and you just tell her that she's okay, that it's not her fault, how much you love her, that she didn't do anything wrong. You know,
Mhm.
all those words that maybe our parents didn't have the capacity to express. And it changes everything. Like every single connection, every little event that is connected to that original incident that had us believe we weren't enough gets affected. So the whole
Totally.
pattern can change now. It opens up like a whole new, we step into a new paradigm, like a new reality
Mhm.
that doesn't even hold the same patterns anymore. You absolutely can heal the past, actually. Like, and yeah, I mean, I love everything that you're saying so much. Of course, I resonate with it, and just even that whole conversation about like, well, what does that mean to love yourself, and your awareness, your newfound awareness of, really just loving every single part of you, like not rejecting anything.
Mhm.
And when we're still rejecting anything in us, which shows up as kind of rejection and judgment outside of us,
Mhm.
right? Then we know that there's a part of us that we still haven't come to acceptance with. But it just, to love it, it's not, we don't need to get rid of those parts. They're not bad, they're not wrong, they're human. And we need to just hold them back in and hold space, like you said so beautifully, like hold space. Can you hold space for every part of you with full acceptance, in without judgment? Because judgment is resisting it. And resistance, what you resist, we know persists, right?
Totally. Yeah.
So, yeah, like until you're really not free. Like really, when you love yourself, you're free. And you're
Mhm.
not free until you can be with every single part of you in full acceptance and not judgment.
And that, I feel like, is the point, capital T, capital P, the point. And the radical self-acceptance, like it's, and I'm not there yet. I'm not proclaiming to have radical self-acceptance, but it's every time I've made a difficult decision and I've just started moving in the direction of it, and the universe meets me where it meets me, and I allow and get better and better with softening into what comes up, including the uncomfortable stuff or the self-doubt that comes up, and the noticing the places where, you know, I mean, it's one part, it's physical. It's like, what part of me physically don't I love and accept, but it's also what part of my personality don't I love and accept that I'm so
Totally.
worried about is going to keep me outside of being accepted by our culture, like, and it's so, I feel like almost every decision I've made has been some version of bravely counterculturally kind of wanting out of it. And yet it's like lately I've been asking, well, how many of those decisions have I been making just to be counterculture? Do you know what I mean? Not because they necessarily were the best fit, but just as sort of a fuck you because I didn't want to just fit in or whatever. Like, but again, even in asking the question, it's not that black and white. It's like, well, it's a little bit of both. Like, and I think subconsciously there was a little bit of, I just want to do what everyone. I've come to believe that the best answer is whatever is the opposite of what they are saying we should do. That's what I should do. Right? So it's like, but it isn't entirely true either. But it is just really interesting to discover, like, oh my gosh, like a lot of the decisions that I've been making have been stemming from this way more unconscious than I thought it was, but it's
Mm.
still all okay. I don't have to feel like, oh no, I've made all these bad decisions because I was even more asleep than I thought I was, or more unaware of my wounds than I thought I was. Like, you know, there really isn't, you just can't go wrong. You really can't. I guess that's the, and
Yeah.
and the only way to know that, though, in the marrow of your bones, because you can read that in 100 books and you can hear it on 1,000 podcasts or whatever, but is to just freaking do it. Just do a thing, whatever it is that's calling to you, just do it. Who even cares what your motivation is initially? You know, if you're feeling the motivation, if it feels exciting and there's some part of you that's like, yes, that's enough. That's all you need, is that some part. You don't need to know what it is even yet. You know, like it'll reveal itself later when you're ready to have it revealed to you. Like, one of the things, because I've always been like a self-help guru and totally into, even when I was like, I keep all my journals, and I've got a journal from like, I got it when I was 10 for my birthday. And in that journal, I wrote from about 10 to about 13 or 14. So it's a really interesting period in my life, right? Of having this. And even then I would, you know, I'm writing, I came home from school and the cool girls didn't like me. And I wonder what I could do to make myself more likable. Like, you know, as a little girl, already was so introspective and worrying and wondering about how I could be my best self or my most optimal self. Right. And so I've had decades of that being my focus. And yet it's like, now I'm coming to this place of almost like, I don't want to say I'm giving up on the self-improvement thing, because I'm not, but it's like this, the thing that was driving it was, I'm not good enough. 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 And now it's like, I just want to fall in love with whatever the heck I am and just be like this peace and this ease, because otherwise it's almost like a war, right, Jeri? It's like the me that I think I should be versus the me that I am. And it's like, but really the only thing you can do is just love.
Exactly.
Just love it in, because there's, otherwise it's just a never ending war. Like it's a never ending decision. You're always debating this or that. Like,
yeah, when you're in the ring fighting yourself every day, like no wonder you have no energy. No wonder you're exhausted all the time, right? Like, so yeah, just love what is. It's not right, it's not wrong, it's not good, it's not bad. It is what it is. And there's like, the biggest thing here is there's no such thing as a wrong decision.
Yes.
It's impossible to make a wrong decision, because any decision will bring you clarity. Mm-hmm. Not this, yes, this. The doors will open or the doors will close, and you'll be redirected. Like, it really is a friendly universe.
It really is a friendly universe.
It really is. Like, what's, you know, what's for you can't miss you. Like, somehow you are going to still, we're all going home. We're all going to go back to the same place anyway. So what route you take is what route you take. Like, we have free will. We have, I mean, that's our power to make decisions, to make choices. So make them. Like, make them, because that's the juice of life. That's how you grow. That's how you learn. That's how you get out of that root-bound pot that you need to transplant, right? We were talking, we had a whole phone call around that, and just how many people are feeling like, oh my gosh, I've outgrown my present situation, and they're still trying to fit into it, and they're feeling the pain of that. And it feels like you're dying when you're still trying to wrap yourself around that same job that you've outgrown, that same relationship that you've outgrown, whatever that is. And you become root bound, and I mean, a plant, their leaves will die. You will die. You need to transplant. But then, yeah, I love the way that you shared. Yeah, so here's the way that I tend to transplant. Right? It's kind of like jump a few pots to this giant pot.
Yeah. You know, to use that metaphor, when you do, when you take a little plant and you transplant it into a too big pot, what happens is the soil stays too wet, because the root system isn't adequate to soak the water up, and then you start to get root rot. So it's a dangerous and uncomfortable way of doing it. Or the other thing is like, I'll just keep transplant. So it's like the right size pot, but it's like 3 gallon, 5 gallon, 7 gallon, 10 gallon. Like, I'm never sitting in it. It's like, as soon as the roots just barely like, I'm like, all right, out we go. And the problem for me, what I've been experiencing is like, hey, if you ever need to know how to make a decision, come to me, because I've made so freaking many of them, right? But it's like, now I'm coming to this place in my life where I'm learning how to like, wait a minute, I got to let my roots settle in here a little bit. Like, if I want to really stretch out, because in order for a plant to really grow tall and flower, it needs to have a really solid, healthy root base, which is interesting because that is that masculine energy that I was talking about at the beginning of this call, like recognizing how much I feel like I've lacked that, and that so many of my choices have been searching for that outside of myself, but like all unconsciously, of course, but I mean, regardless, right? And that almost the constant moving was sort of a way of, so I didn't have to notice I didn't have roots, that they weren't solid. It was like I just kept like, as like, because oh well, I just moved, so of course I feel like, you know, my life's kind of crazy and chaotic and I don't feel rooted and grounded. You know, it's not because I don't profoundly feel that way, it's just circumstantial.
Yeah, wow, that's big.
Yeah, tell me about it. So now I'm like, whoo, there's this. Okay, so let's acknowledge that you have felt your whole life, Desi, profoundly unrooted. And that's, to be honest, why I think the underpinning need to come back to this island was because I was here as a child during those 8 formative years, right? Like this was, so subconsciously, this was the closest thing I could remember to roots, to feeling part of a family, because we lived here, you know, my parents were married when we lived here, and my brothers were with me, and like, so it's like the closest thing. Like there's this song, like I can't remember it and I wish that I could, because now it's going to be this weird tangent, but anyway, I freaking cry every time I hear it. It's a country song. I think Miranda Lambert sings it, but I can't remember. But it's The House That Built Me, and it's like every time I hear it, I'm like, so the storyline is this: she comes back to her small town and there's obviously somebody else living in the house, and she knocks on the door and is like, you know, can you let me in? I promise I won't take anything but a memory. And she's describing her bedroom where she's in these handprints at the, you know, in the cement at the door of mine, and my dog's buried in the backyard. And it's just like, holy shit, I know exactly what you mean about like that longing for that roots. And I think the reason why a lot of people struggle with making big decisions is they're afraid of uprooting themselves. You know, I mean, they're afraid of that unrooted feeling. But if you're already really rooted and what you need is to transplant, like honestly, it's never as bad as you think it's going to be. It really isn't. In fact, it just feels incredibly liberating, terrifying and liberating to have that space and to go, whoo, right? And I think sometimes we don't want to do that either, because where I was doing it so I wouldn't have to look at things, I think people don't want to do it for the same reason. Because, you know, if you think about pulling a plant out of a pot and putting it in a new one, like its roots kind of get a little like shooken up, and it does have to, the roots do have to grow into that new pot to get the water in. And that process invariably brings up stuff, right? And how you choose to deal with it is enormous for sure. But you need to have the stuff brought up. Like life is living.
It's there, it's in you already.
Yeah.
Right? Anything that's getting triggered in your present moment is from your past. It's already in you. You know, that person or that event didn't cause it. It was already there, you know, but we look for someone to blame, and we, you know, the circumstance, the government, this person, our loved one, right? You made me feel this way. Well, no, that feeling was already, it was trapped. And now it's been uprooted, thankfully.
Thankfully.
Thank you, relationships. Oh my gosh, that's what they're for. To show us our woundedness, to show us what's trapped in us.
Yes.
And what needs to come up, to be cleared and to be healed. And really, that looks like loving it, to be felt, like really felt, not talking ourselves out, not judging, but actually welcoming that part of you. That is the process of learning to love yourself.
Totally. Oh, like that story, you know, that story, I think almost every religion has the story, but the Catholic one or Christian ones, when they come to mind, where, you know, they're supposed to let Jesus come in, but instead like a beggar shows up in the house, like, well, we're not going to let you in, you know? And it's like, but that is Jesus, or that is God, or that is your repressed material. So if you want to love, if you want to deeply love yourself, when it's the beggar or the, you know, leper that shows up at your door, aka your shame or your guilt or your profound loathing of yourself or whatever it is that you don't want to invite in, that's what that means, to invite it in for tea, to invite it into your supper table, is to invite it in to be loved and received. And like, and it's like, oh, Jeri, this process, all you got to do is freaking sit there and feel it. That's it. Like,
that's
just
it.
noticing it in my body, noticing it, like letting the tears fall without getting all judgmental about myself about it, and trying to invent a story around why they're, it's just like, wow, I'm having these big feelings. I'm just going to be present for them. I'm just going to let them in and be messy and have snot drip down and do whatever it is. And it goes of it's like emotions in energy and motion. It leaves of its own accord.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's like the Guest House by Rumi. Like
Okay.
whenever I teach mindfulness and meditation, it's like, those guests, the physical guests, the emotional guests, the mental guests, and the ones that we don't want, right? That
Yeah.
that feel like bad or scary, like welcome them all in for tea, because they're sent from beyond as to heal and to complete, like for that whole completion self-love process. Yeah, so what I'm feeling like I really want to do is kind of break it down a little bit for people, like
Sure.
this process of making a difficult decision, and how we can maybe uh, feel a little bit more confident to take that risk, to do what we long to do, and what are maybe some of the steps when you're at that place in your life where something needs to change, right? Where you kind of feel like you're dying, or you're going through a grieving process and ending, and I don't yet know what this new beginning is, or what this new life is going to look like. Yeah, and I'm just noticing on Facebook we've got people that are definitely affirming that it's a friendly universe, and like Jess says, I choose love, right? Like, are we going to make a decision out of love or out of fear? And so maybe we can flesh that out a little bit and help people discern where a decision is coming from. So from your experience, what would those steps be when you're kind of facing that turning point in your life?
The first one would definitely be the excitement, following my excitement. Like, when I'm sitting in the situation and I'm needing to choose between A or B, like, one of the big ones, let's say quite some time ago, is, whether to stay in my marriage or not, that at that time had felt it was so constricting. Like, you talk about feeling like you were dying, and this isn't about blaming. I mean, I attracted that, and there was a million learning opportunities. Like, it's not that, but so here I am, though. I'm in this place where I really am just feeling like, holy shit, I have to make a choice here for myself. But I have a family, I have kids. I mean, there's 1,000 reasons why I should stay, but even the crazy decision to leave, was the one that held more. Like, I felt like there was life there, or there was hope there, or there was some openness there, even though it was terrifying because I didn't know what that would mean. And I really didn't have a very steady income at that time. And like, there was a million questions. And and I bring that up because you're never going to feel like it's safe to make these choices. Like, I don't think you do. Like, I think you feel like pulled towards one, but it's not because it's safe.
It's usually the one that feels a little more scary.
Yeah. Like,
fear is just excitement without the breath. So following your excitement might actually be choosing the path that scares you.
Yeah. And I mean, but again, having compassion, there's like 4 pillars of self-love, that compassion being one of them, right? Like, okay, I know I'm scared, right? But like, am I scared because my gut knows that this is actually like a back alley full of rapists? Or am I just scared because it's the unknown? Right. And even with the back alley full of rapists, it's like, well, could I handle that? Maybe, maybe not, but it's like, one of the things that I found our culture is we worship at the altar of safety, which really is worshiping at the altar of fear. And I get it. And I understand. Yeah. And our amygdalas are wired that way. Like, I understand why we come from that place. But one of the biggest turning points for me, when I was able to get unstuck from that paralysis through analysis of, well, should I do this? Should I do that? Should I do this or that, or this or that, or this, or pros and con lists are equal on both sides. Like, fuck, like, like, it really was to still my mind, even with whatever practice I had available to myself at that time. Because again, like right at the very beginning, maybe the only thing you can do is just take a deep breath, right? Like, and maybe say a prayer or something. Like, maybe you haven't really cultivated a deep relationship with the divine or a really in-depth meditation. But so however you, wherever you're at, can come to a place where you can just, for just a moment, and override the monkey mind, the matote, the never ending chatter that's going in there. And just, I mean, sometimes a really simple basic tool would be to just write the question down with your dominant hand and answer it with your non-dominant hand, right? Like, should I stay or should I go? And just like, it's incredibly powerful. You know what's best for you. You came preloaded knowing what the best route was for you, and you're on it. Like, so whether you take your sweet time and you make 100 side stops, or it's kind of more direct, or whatever is irrelevant, because it's all God. There is no right path and wrong path, or, no one's getting gold stars at the end because they took the straight one that didn't have one single loop in it or whatever, like it's, to steal from this podcast I was just listening to, he's like, it's not like, one side of the vanilla ice cream box is judging the other side as being better or worse. It's all the same, right? It's just all ice cream. So don't worry about it, like, just what feels the most, with the most energy, the most excitement, the most possibility, the most, before anything else shuts, before your brain goes in to shut it down with 100 reasons why you shouldn't.
Exactly. Yep.
Just, that's the one. And just take the step and do it. And yeah. And you're held. The universe is a friendly place. You're held. Like, honest to God, I have made so many decisions that were very challenging and came with an enormous set of challenges with them. It's not like it was all easy. Oh, I made the great, how I know I made the right decision and the universe supports me? Because I didn't have a single challenge along the way. Like, that's not how it worked. Although I did think that the first time, like the first major decision, like to leave, I was like, okay, well, I'll know it's the right decision because it'll be easy and everything will just fall into place and the universe will have my back. And that's how I'll know I made the right choice. And that year, that was 2010, because I left before that. But 2010 was like, work collapse. I was like the brokest I'd ever been. I couldn't even keep my kids fed. I was having like major existential crises. And it was like, oh God, like I never should have left. It was the wrong decision to leave. But something in my body knew that it was not the wrong decision. It was the right decision. And it was just, and I personally needed to be enormously challenged in making the right decision so that I could realize that it's okay. Like, that's not the metric to decide what a right or wrong decision is the ease of it all. Like, and I think sometimes, especially in the spiritual community, there's this thing about like, well, you'll know that you're in grace when everything just falls into place effortlessly. And if it's not effortless, then that means that you have limiting beliefs or that you've made the wrong choice, or there's like this, so then what most people do to try to bypass that is like literally bypass it. It's like these mental gymnastics about being okay with what they're not okay with. And like, and it's not, so instead of actually loving it, because I think you have to come to that place organically, you can't fake it, like it's, you just have to trust that it just gets deeper and better and more genuine and more authentic as you go. And in the meantime, just do the best you can where you're at and cultivate self-compassion. If nothing else, that's like, please, for the love of God, cultivate self-compassion.
Yes.
Because in forgiving this, it like we talked about at the very beginning, it goes back in time, and you can forgive let go of these stories about, oh, my dad should have been more like this, or my mom should have been more like that, or damn the government, or, all of these things. It's like, you can see that you yourself did the best you could, because you're approaching yourself with love and compassion. And so it would stand to reason that everyone else did too. And this like a loving awareness rolls out over all of it. And the other cool thing is, like, for example, my father, I grew up in an alcoholic family, and he would just like flip off into rages, and I never knew why. So I cultivated this incredible empathy, like dialed right into the energy of everybody in my house, because that was my survival tactic, which
Mm.
now is kind of like a superpower now that I'm learning how to use it in a more conscientious way, and not just trying to make everyone around me feel good so I feel good.
Stay safe.
Instead,
Yeah.
I have this enormous capacity to just hold space for people's big ass, huge feelings, whether that's enormous joy and euphoria, or if it's profound self-loathing and shame, whatever. Instead of trying to change them to so everyone feels better, I'm using this superpower to just hold the space and allow what is to arise in that space without judgment. And it started with myself, like learning how to do that for myself. And it's just been
Yeah.
like, it's getting, Jeri, I feel like the snowball effect is happening. Like, it's crazy. Like, I've touched on it over the years, like but like all of a sudden in the last like 3 days, it just feels like it's like
Woo,
something huge is shifting. It's just, yeah, it's amazing.
isn't it?
Ah!
Oh, well, I can feel it. I mean, yeah, as you speak, I get these chills and I'm just
Mm,
like, wow. I can just feel people taking a breath like into this. And that,
good.
oh my gosh, like all of that stuff, all the trauma.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
developed superpowers from that. Like there's a whole flip side to that, the mechanisms and the survival mechanisms that we had to develop in order to stay safe and accepted and loved and
Hmm.
and navigate everything and everyone in our family, and especially our own self, right? And then it becomes like you said, like, wow, I have the capacity to hold space for anything. I have like no judgment. I have this superpower, and you do. I mean, you're the superpower, that rocking emotionally authentic living, like our radio show. I mean, it was so rightly named.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what you're feeling. Like, can you hold space for extreme joy? Can you hold
Mhm.
space for the shame and the deepest, darkest parts of you? And can you do that for yourself? Because if you can, then you can do it for another, and Des can do it. Like, seriously, for everyone, because she's done it for herself.
Yeah.
Like your whole life, you've developed that.
And
And
I love doing it. Like, every little job that I've ever done, like, I mean, because you've seen me through several career changes and little, but
yes,
underpinning it has always been, all I want to do is hold space for people's own seeing themselves, birthing into their own selves, right? And that it is terrifying if you've never done it before, and if you haven't had anyone to hold the space for you, and and the very first time you do it, it is terrifying, but it gets easier and easier. And like, there's literally nothing anybody could say or do that I wouldn't be like, okay, like,
exactly.
it's all you're doing is holding space. And it's in that acceptance and that acknowledgement, and having somebody witness it non-judgmentally, where you begin to cultivate that for yourself. And I don't know how I want to like bring that out into the world. I'm just throwing it out here now, like, because I'm just coming into this. Holy shit, that's the thing. That's the actual thing that's been underneath all the other little, coaching or interior design, or like all of it has been some version of, can I just hold space for you to find yourself, like, to feel yourself?
Yes.
Can I just hold space for you to feel yourself? That's like, because I know through my own experience of doing that, how profound it has been in bringing more joy to my life, infinitely more joy. And this love, like, I tearing up all the freaking time. And it's not because I'm sad. It's just this huge welling of love. It's like, yeah.
Like, I
And is it,
love myself. Oh my gosh, I love myself.
and
Right?
everyone and
And
everything, and this whole freaking thing is the coolest ride, even the
yeah,
ugly parts, even the frustrating parts. All right, come on in,
they're all mirrors. The universe
Yeah.
is our mirror. And like Rumi says, the universe is our mirror. And when you look into a mirror, you don't see the state of the mirror. You see yourself. So which parts of you do you still need to embrace?
Mhm.
Do you need to love? Like, which parts are you still judging? And can we just bring them all back?
Yeah.
Like from the neck down, literally feeling it, letting go of the story and actually get into your body, feel the sensations in your body. Where does
Hmm.
that live? Like that pain, that shame, where does it live? And hold space for it, like breathe into it. hold it, love it, welcome it. And that's the secret ingredient that most people miss. They think they have to fix themselves, that there's
Hmm.
something wrong with that part. They have to get rid of it. And that is, you're never going to heal it with that approach, right? It's never going to feel safe enough. It's never, it's like,
Hmm.
let me just get louder, and you're going to have a pattern of it trying to show you, okay, I'm still here. I'm still here. I'm still here. Like getting louder and louder until you get that cosmic 2x4 outside the
Hmm.
head,
Yeah.
which works too.
Yep. Eventually.
But that's the thing is, that's the where it does, like this spiritual journey, when you talked about how there's this um, tendency to believe that it shouldn't be hard, everything should just be easy if it's the right decision. But the thing is, it's easy to even be in shame and pain after a while, like
Yes.
because you have the tools. Like I almost get excited when I have like a serious anger surge within me. I'm like, darn, like I don't feel that very often. It's kind of exciting. Like, wow, what is this? Like, thank you. I must be doing something right. I
Hmm.
must be moving forward in my life in order for this to be surfacing for me, because it's saying,
Yes.
hey, I'm here and I need to, I need some attention before you can do this thing, like before you can continue really moving forward, really stepping into the truest version of yourself. You're not actually like, you're not getting anywhere. You're just like really embodying who you already are and dismantling everything that's in the way, but dismantling it by loving it, by accepting it. Like
Just
not
welcoming it in.
not
Like
like
if you
I'm
could,
broken and I need fixing, right? That's
yeah, no, it's like this utter acceptance of all that is, including the you, that all that is. And there's these layers. I mean, because at the ultimate layer, there's only the oneness is like 7 billion that add up to one, right? I mean, so there's all that is, that ever was, that ever will be, exists in the now. And that, unfortunately, that level of awareness isn't something that we are even meant to reside in perpetually, I think. I mean, I've touched it, like this, all, I am all, I'm everything and nothing simultaneously. But there's a reason why I have a physical body, and I can touch things, and that I have preference. Like, so like there's these layers of truth and of experience or perspective, right? And I find like now I'm at this place where if I'm feeling stuck, like, ugh, like, why am I so stuck in this place? It's like I ask the question, is there a level of perspective that I can take so I can get a more clearer, more truthful perspective of what's going on here, right?
yeah.
But also in that is recognizing the part of you that feels stuck and feels frustrated. And this isn't about trying to fix that. It's to just like encompass it into something a little bit bigger, and it stretches up. And so in that experience, I feel like it's like more and more that I'm able to sort of keep one part of me sort of tapped into the oneness,
Yeah.
the great
Plugged
oneness of it
in.
all. Yeah.
Yeah.
While also having, this human experience. And I can't even remember where I came across the symbolism of the cross, which, you're familiar with Christianity or whatever, but it's like,
Yeah.
time and space. And it's in that cross point that is the only thing that's real, which is now. And it's everything which is emanating from it. So it's not like over there and then over there. It's everything everywhere all the time, right? But our experience is like this.
Yes.
But it's supposed to be like this, right? Like this isn't something we need to run from. We're not supposed to escape life, right? Is how can I welcome life in? How can I,
Like all of it.
all of it? How can I continuously stretch around it in a way that feels in a time frame that's natural and organic, and it's not this trying to skip to the finish line, which is something else I've been guilty of trying to do. I'll read a book and then I get it, and then I'm like, can I just like skip all the growth part and just get to the I'm enlightened part? Not realizing that actually what enlightenment means is literally enlightenment, like light, as in you take it all and it's all okay. Yeah. But anyway, so
So there is no
throw that out
judgment.
there. Yeah. I throw it out there in case anyone else is, maybe guilty of doing that. Like, hey, yeah, me too.
Oh yeah. Part of the process of awakening,
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, this has been great. And I love just your tips for making an aligned decision. Like, number one, there's no such thing as a wrong decision. Number two, like, follow your excitement.
Yeah.
And really, even before all of that, getting still. Like, where is that? What is it that you do? What is it that you use? Meditation, nature, to just calm the monkey mind, because you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. So
Yeah.
if you're perceiving this to be a problem and you're torn and you're overanalyzing, then yeah, you're going to want to just shift something, like move your body. You can do some qigong, some different exercises, get into your body. You can do some meditation, some breath work. I loved your idea. I haven't done that for a long time. Writing with a non-dominant hand. Like, I totally remember doing that. It was so interesting, the stuff that would come out. Like, cause yeah, you're doing that crossover of left and right brain, and we're so used to a certain way. So just by doing something differently, you get some different results. You get some different
Yes.
answers. You start to stretch into that. You know what? It doesn't even matter what I do,
Oh,
because
get up on the wrong side of the bed just to do something different
do
that day.
something
Like invite in
exactly
something like, yeah,
to
wrong,
get
but the
used
other
to that.
side.
Yeah. Get used to the unknown, right? Do something
Yes.
so that you don't have that hijack when you make those difficult decisions of your head, just saying, oh my God, like, this is dangerous, don't do it. And it's just saying that it's unfamiliar. This is unfamiliar territory. That's all your head is worried about, is just keeping you safe, comfortable in familiar territory, even if it's super painful, even if it'll kill you.
Yes.
It's going to try to talk you out of whatever's going to grow you just because it's unfamiliar. And so acknowledge that. Okay, I hear you and I love
Yes.
you.
Thanks for trying to keep me safe.
Yeah, thanks so much, right? But I'm not
Yeah.
a child anymore. And I am safe because I bring it. It's your presence. That's your safety. It's in you, right? If our consciousness is what's showing up outside of us as our life experience, I mean, bring it in your presence. And yeah, and just for me, getting still, and I ask all the same questions you do, like, which one brings more excitement, which one feels lighter, which one feels heavier, which one like feels more closure, which one feels like there's an expansion, or you talked about that possibilities, like, and just choose. And that was hugely enlightening to me, was when I couldn't make a decision because I was so worried about making the wrong decision, about people judging me, about I was crippled for most of my life, like, because we're talked out of our decisions as a child. We're not taught to trust ourselves. And so when I finally just said, okay, well, if I did know, what would the answer be? And I had to just make it up. Like, even something as simple as a restaurant, like Des and I talking about, okay, well, where do you want to go and eat? I'd always like, oh, wherever you want. And I literally thought I didn't have a preference. Like, I did not know what I wanted. I thought, well, I don't know. Whatever you want is what I want, because I feel good when everyone around me feels good. That was my default. And so then it was like, yeah, I challenged myself to make a decision and act as if I did have a preference, and just make it up at first. But that opened everything up for me. Like, that was life changing, to just practice making decisions. Like, and it started with the small things like a restaurant.
Yeah.
And ends up with, like, yeah, like the decision to stay in a marriage, to stay in my teaching career, or to go all in my coaching practice, because I was kind of renowned for one foot in and one foot out. And relationships don't really work that well when you have one foot out the
No.
door. And
Been
my
there
career
too.
wasn't working that well with one foot out the door either, right? Like, my coaching was half-assed. It was like a hobby, and my teaching. So when I finally just made the choice and kind of, you burn the boats, right?
Yeah.
Then it's like, wow, everything opened up. Like, my coaching practice filled up that year because I finally resigned, and officially. But it took me many years to do that. I did the dance, the one foot in, one foot out, just in case. But that's what I do with, that's what we do with our clutter too. Just in case, I better keep this keep this item of clothing, keep this thing. And I mean, and Des has been pivotal in my life for that. She likes to declutter, get rid of everything, totally reinventing herself all the time. And and it's
Yeah.
and it's fantastic. Like, and you do it in such a beautiful, upbeat way. And you
Mm.
always take the learning and the lessons and you see the gift in everything and go, yeah, like none of this, not one choice I've ever made in my life was a mistake. And I can honestly say that. I don't know if I would change anything.
And
Like,
that's where freedom is. I think our that tendency to not want to make a choice, to have one foot in or one foot out, or the habit of, I know a lot of people that stay in relationships physically, but emotionally, mentally, they're not in that relationship. And that's a way for them to maintain what they think is security or freedom, where I'm in the relationship, but I don't feel stifled by the relationship because I'm not actually mentally checked into it at all. Right. So it's like it's a very interesting thing to recognize, what does freedom mean? I think a lot of choices that I've made have been my seeking freedom, seeking autonomy, seeking like self-actualization, and call it whatever you want as you go up but it's basically, it's how do I be free? And when you start to realize what's going on in your head, like what is influencing your decisions or your unwillingness to make a decision, then you start to become free. And I mean, true freedom is when you're in love with yourself and you can just accept life as it shows up without it needing to be. You can have preferences, but like you hold them loosely. Like, I'd prefer this, but if I don't get that, it's not the end of the world, right? Like, if you can find a way to just allow life to be what it is, to allow yourself to be what you are, that's the freedom that the trying to hold on to everything or have, a foot in either camp. Like, that's like a fake way of trying to achieve that sense of freedom or fluidity or autonomy or self, that's just been such a major theme in my life, is I want to, like, me. What about me? What do I want? Because like it's like, well, I'm happy if everyone around me is happy. So what is it that you want? And then I'll be happy. Right. And it's been an interesting journey about figuring out what the heck I want. And the only way to
yeah.
do that is to make some choices. Some of them are going to be, you're like, well, it wasn't that. Right. But it's okay. Like, so don't keep yourself forced in that choice just because here's something else that I've encountered a lot is like, well, okay, so I'm presented with a difficult choice. So I make a choice, and then things come up in the scope of having made that choice that are challenging. And then it's like, how can I sort of, well, I've made this choice now, so I've made my bed and I have to sleep in it. And it's like, no, you don't. Like, so with the van, so case in point, here's where there's this discernment that comes in with that. It's like, with the van, I bought it. I had some challenges around it. There was like this opportunity of sorts for me to just say, oh, you know what? Forget it. Fuck it. I'll just put it back. I'll go back to the safe little life. Like, that was a bad choice to
Yeah,
decide
that
to
could have
burn
been
all
a
the bridges.
sign, Des. That could have been a sign that you made the wrong decision.
It could have been a sign. It could have been a sign.
You could have
Maybe
made
it
it into
was.
one.
I don't know. But I didn't feel like it. And this is the thing, is you really got to practice that feeling into your own gut, your own intuition. It was like, is this a bad choice or not? Because there's another van that I drove all the way from Edmonton to Vancouver to see. And I had a bad feeling about it that night. When I have another good story about this, and we can wrap it up because I'm sure we're getting late here. But so I drove all the way to Vancouver. I was like, cash in hand. I was going to trade in my car plus some cash for this van. I get there. The whole night before, I had this like yucky feeling about it. Like maybe I had made the wrong choice because I said I would buy it, and I e-transferred him a pretty substantial deposit. Right. And I'm like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I get there, I look at it. It's definitely a freaking hard no. But now I'm like, what about this money? Can I get it back? Like, there was a big mystery around that. And this particular story, yes, I got my money back and it was fine, but I had to face all these fears about letting the guy down because now I'm not actually going to buy it, and feeling like I wasted mine and my boyfriend at the time's time by driving out there, and all the gas and all the extra miles we put on the car. But we just said, well, let's go all the way to the island and we'll go visit some friends and family that we know that live there. And we'll just turn this into a little impromptu holiday. Right. And this is all during COVID. So there's all this extra, like, what are you doing traveling? I mean, just all this stuff, right? Then fast forward to just more recently, and I sold that little Fiat to somebody else. And then because I have a van as my primary vehicle, it's like I have it parked and set up, and it's like a pain in the ass to use it as a daily driver. So I wanted something here that I could just drive to the grocery store, right? Where I didn't have to pick all. Mm-hmm. And so I had an idea in my mind about what I wanted, and some friends that I had here were like looking for me as well, like, all excited to help me find this vehicle. I find what appears to be the perfect truck. I'd like wanted it since I was in high school, this truck, right? And it's like perfect. Go down to see it. And I just first of all, they had locked the keys in, and they were like, could not get the keys out. And they're like, well, it'd probably only take us 5 minutes. And so I said to my friend at the time, my boyfriend, I'm like, let's go grab a bite to eat, and like, let me sit on this because I feel weird about it. And I feel it's a sign that the keys are stuck in it, right? Because I can't go because the keys, I can't get the keys to go. Like, think about that in a symbolic way though, right? Like there is kind of,
yeah.
Like, so anyway, we get a bite to eat, we come back. They've got the door open so I can get in. I go to take it. It's making some funky sounds. So I call my son, who's an all things guru, especially when it comes to Chevy trucks. And he's like, oh, don't worry about it, Mom. Those trucks are bulletproof, blah, blah, blah. I go, and it's raining too, by the way, I should point out. So it's hard to see the condition of the paint. And it's like, I didn't want to get underneath it to like actually on my back to look, because it was like in a puddle. Like, anyway, so I'm like looking, I'm hemming, I'm hawing, I'm like, I don't know. And I'm like, yeah, okay, maybe. Like, what does it need? And it turns into this long discussion. I wind up paying more than what the list price was on it, which is ridiculous. Give him a substantial down payment, lose my keys now somewhere. So I can't even fucking leave. And I'm like, everything. I turned to Jason and I'm like, I'm telling you, man, like everything is just telling me this is the wrong decision. Like, I want this truck, but it's like the wrong decision, right? He's like, well, don't worry about it. We'll give him the deposit. We'll figure it. Everything will be fine. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Everything will be fine. Finally, we do find the keys in the truck, and I drive home. I do not sleep the entire freaking night, 0 sleep, because I'm in so much anxiety around this purchase, and I'm tossing, I'm turning, because it's a lot of money. It's $5,000, which is like, for me in my world, a hell of a lot of money, right? And it's like all I've got left, really. And I'm like, oh, I don't know if it's the right decision. And he's like, listen, I'll buy it for you, right? If that's what you need to feel okay about it, and you can just pay me back, right? Like, so that you're not, living off fumes kind of thing, right? And I'm like, okay. And then in the middle of the night, I almost texted the guy and said, can I just please have my money back? Because I don't want the truck. But then I didn't, because I called my son in the morning, and he's like, Des, just do it. Just buy it. It'll be fine. Everything in me said, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. But all these outside sources that I trusted and appreciated, and there was this part of me that wanted the truck. Like, I had already fallen in love with it before I'd seen it, right? So I buy it. And I have to tell you, Jeri, we've just had problem after problem with this truck, and the whole frame is fucked on it. Like, it really is. Like, my spidey senses knew they were asking way too much for it, and there was going to be a lot of problems with it. And so one might be inclined to say then that it was the wrong choice, right? But here's the lemonade. First of all, it's confirmation that fucking rights. I'm trusting my gut next time. I don't care if 45 people tell me that everything is going to be okay. If my spidey senses say no, it's no. Yeah, it's totally worth it. Very cheap education, actually. Second of all, because it's had all these little issues, it's been this enormous bonding thing between Nathan and I, because my son and I don't have a lot in common, really. I mean, other than being related, but what interests him and what interests me are very different for the most part. But this truck, with all of its never-ending little mechanical issues, is this constant place for us to connect and to bond and to share stories with. And so there's this really cool gift in that. And Jason and I, neither one of us are particularly mechanically inclined, but we're sure as hell learning how to be, because every time we turn around, there's another shitty little thing on this thing that needs to be fixed, right? So even the wrong choice can still be a good choice. It can still be the right choice. And the fact is, I love this truck. Like, I'm learning so much about my own capacity, just like the van had a bunch of little things that I had to learn how to fix, and is teaching me this capacity that I can handle life. Like, when it gets into areas that I'm not necessarily good with, it's like you can YouTube video and just take it step by step, Des, and you can do this. Like, I have far more capacity than I ever realized. And this truck is just a furtherance of that. So even the wrong choice is the right choice. So don't worry about it.
Yeah, we don't need that fear energy.
Yeah.
Worry is fear. It's not what love would do. When you're in worry about anyone or anything, you're not loving them in that moment.
Well,
And
you know,
love
as
is what's going to help and heal.
I heard someone refer to it as you don't respect them. It's you're worried about them. You're not respecting their own capacity to make the choices they need to make for themselves. And
Right? I
I
don't
just thought, what
believe
an
in them.
interesting way to look at it. You know, it's like, well, do you like that person? Yes. Do you respect them? Yes. So then allow them to make their choices
Yeah,
out of
set them
respect.
free.
You don't, yeah, that's love. Love would trust that they're on their own journey, that they're making their own choices, and maybe they're not the ones you would make for yourself. Well, good. It's not your life, so don't worry about it.
That's a great way to end. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you don't know what's best for them because you don't live in their body.
Yeah.
You know what's best for you because you live in your body.
And even if you make the wrong decision, even if they, your loved one, makes the wrong decision, it's
Yeah,
still the right decision. So don't worry about
totally
it.
the right decision. There's, there's learning in there.
Yes.
There's growth in there. And even if it's just like, yeah, to trust my spidey senses next time,
Hmm.
like that's important. That's an important lesson.
Yeah.
And like you said, I love the way you make lemonade. Yeah, if life gives you lemons, make lemonade.
Yeah.
There's always something good, some kind of gift in that. So
Yeah.
yeah, well, Des, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for just sharing your authentic self with us, being real, sharing your tears, sharing your laugh, and your life journey. I mean, you have so much wisdom. Like you really do take every experience that you go through and it becomes wisdom. And I
Thank you.
feel you and I feel your words and I love you so much.
Thank you. That feels deep. It lands really well. Thank you. I appreciate that enormously, Jeri. And thanks for this opportunity. You know, I love connecting like this with you. And I definitely love sharing, you know, airing my own dirty laundry, as it were, if you want to call it that, out to the world so that, you know, people can see themselves, you know, in some of my stories and see that it's all okay and that they're lovable and delightful, flaws and all, struggles and all, like
Mhm.
fears and yeah. And the more that you can fall in love with yourself and expand your capacity to have that vulnerable open-heartedness, like life is just, it's just so much brighter and magnificent. Like it honestly, the journey has never been about moving back to BC. It turns out it's been about moving back in here, you know.
Wow,
Yeah.
absolutely. So true.
So
So
thank you.
beautiful. Yeah. And
Yeah.
thank you for those of you that joined us live, Bruce and Marie Claire and Jess and Cal. Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank you.
much. And let us know if you're on the replay and what your takeaways are. We'd love to know as
Yeah.
well. If you have any questions, we'll monitor the chat. So
Yes, and feel free to reach out. Honestly, like normally I wouldn't like just throw this out there, but like feel free to reach out to me personally on Messenger if you'd like. If maybe you've got a question of your own that you're struggling with, or you just, you know, I don't know if it resonates and you want to reach out and be like, yeek, you know, I could use a little space to hold some stuff. I'm here for you. So yeah.
yeah, definitely. Des is
Okay.
your girl. And I'm here for you too. So
Yeah.
okay, take care. Lots of
Thank you.
love.
Mwah.
See you.
Bye.
Bye.